Magandang buhay, Grade 9. This is Teacher Mai from Dasmariñas North National High School, and I'll be discussing to you quadratic functions. This video is divided into 3 parts, and the first part is about modeling real-life situations using quadratic functions. Let's start with, what is a quadratic function? By definition, a quadratic function is a function that has an equation in the form y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are real numbers and a is not equal to 0. Lagi din nating tatandaan na minsan ang ginagamit natin ay f of x instead na y. But don't worry, pareho lang sila ng ibig sabihin. Unlike linear functions with graphs like these, the graph of a quadratic function looks more like a U. This kind of graph is referred to as parabola. It has a vertex, an axis of symmetry, an opening, and 3 intercepts at most. So when it comes to graph of quadratic functions, pwede siyang pointing upwards or downwards. Pwedeng wider or mas malapad. Pwede rin naman siyang narrower or mas manipis. So, sa example na to, yung vertex ay nasa origin, pero pwede rin naman siya sa ibang parts ng Cartesian plane. So, pwede siya kahit saan. So, nakikita natin yung parabola kahit saan. Example, sa nature. So, nakikita natin siya sa mga rainbow, o kaya sa mountain ranges, o kaya naman sa mga man-made infrastructures katulad ng tulay, roller coasters, at kahit yung simpleng fountains. At dahil nga parabolas can be seen everywhere, marami tayong real-life problems na nasa-solve using quadratic functions, especially problems involving objects subjected to gravity. Sabi nga ni Isaac Newton, what goes up must come down. Yung mga objects subjected to gravity, lagi silang nagpa-follow ng parabolic path. So ito pa yung mga example ng mga objects na nagpa-follow ng parabolic motion. Example, rockets or missiles. Pwede rin cannonballs. Nakikita rin natin yan sa mga sports, especially sa mga sports na gumagamit ng bola. Pwede rin naman yung mga objects na tinatapon gamit yung slingshot, tulad na lang ng larong Angry Birds. Studying quadratic functions can answer questions like maximum height, distance, and time. Hindi lang yan, marami pang iba. That's the end of the first part of this video. Before moving on to the next part, make sure to answer Learning Task 1 sa page 26 ng module ninyo. Okay, let's start with part 2. So part 2 is about representing a quadratic function using table of values, graph, and equation. So quadratic functions can be represented using table of values, graph, and equation. Pero diba, lahat naman ng functions ay pwedeng i-represent ng tatlong yan. So paano natin malalaman kung yung nire-represent ba ng mga yan ay quadratic function? Well, obviously, if a graph shows a parabola that points up or down, then we can say that the graph represents a quadratic function. Pero paano kapag ang given na ay equation or table of values? Let's look at example 1. Is this a quadratic function? Y is equal to x squared plus 6x plus 8. Note that the form of the equation in a quadratic function is ax squared plus bx plus c. I-note natin na ang highest degree ng x ay 2. Since sa given natin ang highest degree ng x ay 2, therefore we can say that this whole thing is a quadratic function. Okay, your turn. Is this a quadratic function? Y is equal to 7x plus 12. All you need to do is check the highest degree of the variable x. I'll give you 5 seconds to think about that. Okay, time is up. The answer is no, not a quadratic function. Note that the highest degree of the variable x is simply 1. How about this one? Is this a quadratic function? I'll give you 5 seconds to think about that. Okay, time is up. The answer is no, not a quadratic function. Note that the right side of the equation must be expanded. When you expand it, you'll notice that the highest degree of the variable x is 4. Therefore, it is not a quadratic function. How about this one? Is this a quadratic function? I'll give you 5 seconds to think about that. Okay, time is up. The answer is yes. Why? Because the highest degree of the variable x is 2. So, paano naman kapag ang given ay table of values? Kapag ganito ang given, kailangan nating i-plot yung mga ordered pairs sa Cartesian plane. Pagkatapos, kailangan nating i-sketch yung graph. If the graph shows a parabola facing upwards or downwards, then we can say that the table of values represents a quadratic function. So, dito nagtatapos yung part 2 ng video natin. Before moving on to part 3, make sure to answer learning task number 2 na makikita sa page 28 at 29 ng modules ninyo. Okay, part 3. Part 3 of this video is about transforming the quadratic function written in standard form into vertex form. So from the standard form, which is f of x is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c, we will need to rewrite it into vertex form, which is actually f of x is equal to a times the square of the difference of x and h plus k, where hk is the vertex. So, paano natin gagawin yon? Okay, so take a look at example 3. Y is equal to x squared minus 6x minus 6. So, pwede natin gamitin yung mga steps na nakalagay sa module natin, page 29. Step 1. Group together the terms containing x. So, given natin, meron tayong dalawang terms na may x squared and negative 6x. So, pwede natin silang i-combine gamit ang pair of parentheses. Okay, so the equation now will look like that. Step number 2, factor out a. If a is equal to 1, proceed to step 3. So, recall natin yung standard form ng equation ng isang quadratic equation or quadratic function. This is going to be ax squared plus bx plus c. So, ang a natin dito ay positive 1. So, since a is positive 1, let's skip number 2, then move on to step 3. Step 3. Complete the expression inside the parentheses to make it a perfect square trinomial. So, recall paano tayo nag-perfect square trinomial or completing the square method. So, we have two terms. Kulang siya ng third term. So, we'll need to complete it. We'll need to find the third term. At the same time, since nag-add tayo ng something sa right side ng equation, para maging balance pa rin yung equation, kailangan natin mag-minus ng same amount kung ilan yung in-add natin to make or to keep the equation balanced. Okay? Next, to find the third term, kailangan natin kunin si second term. Second term natin is negative 6x. So, negative 6 divided by 2, so that's going to be negative 3 squared. Negative 3 squared is 9. So, we'll need to add 9 here to make it a perfect square. At the same time, we'll need to minus 9 to keep the equation balanced. Okay? So, Next step, step number 4. Simplify and express perfect square trinomial as a square of binomial. So simplify muna natin, negative 6 and negative 9. That's gonna be negative 15. Then inside the parentheses, we will need to convert it or to write it as a square of binomial, and that's gonna be x minus 3 squared. So this whole thing is the vertex form of the given equation, given function. Okay? Next, how about example number 4? So same steps, given y is equal to 2x squared minus 4x minus 5. So step number 1, group. Group together the terms containing x. So the terms containing x are 2x squared and negative 4x. Let's combine them or let's group them using a grouping symbol, pwedeng parentheses, and move to second step. Step 2, factor out a. If a is equal to 1, proceed to step 3. In this case, this is going to be a. So a is 2, b is negative 4, and c is negative 3. Since a is not equal to 1, hindi tayo pwedeng mag-skip. Let's factor out 2. So it's gonna be like this. So I factored out 2, then 2x squared will just become x squared. Then negative 4x will become negative 2x. So dinivide lang. Okay, nag-factor out. Step number 3. Complete the terms inside. Complete the expression inside the parentheses to make it a perfect square trinomial. So same with what we did at example number 3, we need to find the third term, but at the same time, kasi nag-add tayo dito, magma-minus tayo ng amount to make the equation balance. So third term will become 1 because this is the second term is negative 2x. It's gonna be negative 2 divided by 2. That's negative 1. And square of negative 1 is positive 1. So this one will become positive 1. Unfortunately, hindi tayo pwedeng mag-minus lang ng 1 because 1 here will be multiplied by 2 pa. So the answer is negative 2 or minus 2 to make the equation still balanced. Okay? Now, step 4. Simplify. Negative 5 minus 2 is negative 7. Then, rewriting this one into a square of binomial, that's going to be like this. X minus 1 squared. And this whole thing is the answer. Okay, that's it for this video. Make sure to answer Learning Task 3 and Learning Task 4 na parehong makikita sa page 99 ng inyong modules. And see you next time!